Hello everyone, and welcome to a highly personal, very chatty video today. This video is going to be quite different from my normal luxury escapism content, but I felt that it was a very important video to film and to put out there. If you have just come from my announcement and the unboxing with that, you will probably know what this video is about, but my husband and I experienced a series of recurrent pregnancy losses, and we are now in a very happy place where we are expecting our little girl next year. But to get to that place and to go through recurrent pregnancy loss or to go through infertility can be a very long, painful process, and it is a process that you can feel very, very alone in. And so my hope with this video today, well, it's not going to be the easiest video to film or the easiest video to watch. My hope is that by sharing what my husband and I went through, by making a conversation that can be talked about, it can help at least one person who is going through this. Whether you have been through miscarriages and pregnancy loss or infertility, whether you're going through it now, if you know someone who's going through it, it's a very hard topic to discuss, and particularly in this country is a topic that is still not very well discussed, both in personal life but also in medical settings. And we had quite a few bad medical side experiences that I'm going to talk to along with this, and I want to talk through what all I felt both emotionally and physically, because there were a lot of things that I was simply not prepared for because I just didn't have the knowledge of it. And like I said, this is going to not be the easiest video, and so I completely understand if it's not a video that you don't want to watch. But if you are someone who has been through this or who knows someone going through this, I hope that this video can give you comfort in knowing that you are not alone. I hope that maybe some of the things that I share can help encourage you, because I think it's very, very important to advocate for yourself and for your own health in medical situations. And I hope that this helps you feel like you can do that. With that, let's just sort of get into what all happened, because I think that the easiest place to start is at the beginning. So a couple of years ago, my husband and I decided that we were ready to start having children. We wanted to have a family, and pretty much as soon as we made that decision, I got pregnant right away. We were very excited. I called the OBGYN office that I planned to go to with the doctor that I planned to go to. And this is a doctor who had a very good reputation. She's also a doctor that I spent some time shadowing, because before I became an accountant, I actually did go to medical school for a brief period of time, and very quickly into medical school decided that that wasn't for me and switched to accounting, which is a story for a different day. But I felt very comfortable going to her. And they told me that at the first appointment, I wouldn't see her. I'd see her later on in the pregnancy. I said, all right, that's fine. And so they told me that I would come in, that their first opening would be when I was at 11 weeks for an ultrasound. And I said, all right, well, if that's the first opening, that's the first opening. And then I'd see a midwife. So my husband and I, very excited, went to the doctor that day. We had not told our family yet that we were expecting, even though I was 11 weeks along, because I have history in my family of recurrent pregnancy loss with my paternal grandmother, so my dad's mother, as well as on my mom's side with my mother. She suffered from endometriosis and infertility because of that. And so it was always something that I was aware of, and for me, I needed to see that healthy ultrasound with that heartbeat to feel comfortable sharing that news outside of my husband and I. And so we went to this appointment, and immediately during the ultrasound knew that something was wrong. The ultrasound tech first off had to switch types of ultrasound, which she shouldn't have had to do. At 11 weeks, she switched from an abdominal to needing to do a vaginal ultrasound. And at that point, I knew something was wrong. Because she wasn't showing us the screen, I had a feeling something was very wrong. And when I did peek around the screen, what I was seeing was not what you should be seeing at 11 weeks. There was also very clearly no heartbeat in the baby. And so I knew that we had lost the baby. I was obviously waiting for confirmation of that. My husband and I, after the ultrasound, again, the ultrasound tech said nothing to us until the very end and said, okay, the midwife will come and get you in just a minute. Just go ahead and sit in the waiting room. And due to some failures with their new check-in process, the midwife didn't realize that I was there. And so my husband and I sat there for an hour just stewing, knowing that things were wrong. And Blake could tell by the ultrasound tech and by my reaction that things were not good. And he didn't quite know what wasn't good, but he knew something wasn't good. And so by the time that we, an hour after that, got into the room, the midwife said, I'm so sorry, you've lost the baby. And the baby has no heartbeat. So you are going to go through a miscarriage with this pregnancy. But we're going to do a blood draw and make sure that your blood types aren't the reason that this happened. And that was all the information that she gave us. She didn't ask if we had any questions. She didn't give us any sort of information. She gave me no information on what to expect with this miscarriage. And I was obviously emotional. I'm still a little bit emotional. But we then went to the lab that's set up there in the OBGYN clinic. So an OBGYN phlebotomist was there, was going to draw my blood. I've obviously had devastating news. I have tears in my eyes. There were some that were streaming down my face, I'm sure. And the nurse who's going to do that blood draw starts making fun of me for being afraid of needles. I am not afraid of needles in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I just had devastating news and was crying. And so being made fun of in a medical setting for having a very human reaction, to receive such lack of compassion, just sent me sobbing. We then move forward about a week in time and I do physically miscarry, and I was not prepared for the level of physical pain or for the emotional and mental pain that would go through with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the miscarriage felt like on both sides of things. So if you want to skip forward and you don't want to hear those details, I completely understand, but I think it's important to share for those who have not experienced it. I woke up, it was about 2 in the morning, I think, in a lot of pain. And I went to the restroom, there was a lot of blood, and I thought, okay, this is it. And then I started to get very, very nauseated, which I was not necessarily expecting, and became very sick. And at that point, I called Blake in so that he could be with me. And Blake held my hand through all of it when he could, when I wasn't sick. And he was there, he was making sure that I had fluids to drink. He ran downstairs, got some crackers for me to have, just something to try and settle my stomach. And the way that he described it, watching me, was that physically I was there, but he said even looking at you, you mentally looked like that you were 1,000 miles away. And I very much was, because I was very much sort of disassociating in that moment. And I'm very grateful that I had my husband with me, because he was needing to evaluate me to see if we needed to go to a hospital. And that was a decision that I was not in a place mentally where I would have been able to competently make that. And so having him there monitoring me, making sure that I was physically as okay as I should be, given the circumstances, was very helpful, but also his presence in general was very, very helpful. And this went on for a couple of hours. And at that point, when the baby came out, it felt like a ping pong ball coming out is the only way that I can put it. And it was very different from the regular bleeding. And at that point, the bleeding pretty much stopped, the pain pretty much stopped, the nausea pretty much stopped, and I was just left completely and totally exhausted. And so I went to bed. Now, there's that side of things that is obviously very physically draining, and it's emotionally and mentally draining as well. But there is also the part that came the next morning where I woke up and physically felt a million times better, because there had been this heaviness that I had no idea I was carrying with me all this time that was all of a sudden gone. There was no pain, there was no heaviness. I felt I had all this energy all of a sudden, and mentally and emotionally that was devastating to me, because obviously this devastating thing had happened and my body was sending all these signals of we feel so great, we feel so great. And my heart was just absolutely shattered. And I had no idea how quickly I would physically feel so much better. And to have that physical relief where your mind and your body are so at odds with each other was very, very difficult to deal with. At the time, my husband and I were also on vacation. I'm actually very glad that we were on vacation for this, because one, he was there with me the whole time. I was already off from work. But then we were very much able to process that together as a team. And I think that going through this with your partner and your partner being there with you is one of the biggest things that can help you get through it. I also had friends and family that were extremely supportive. We didn't tell everyone. We told our immediate family, so my parents, Blake's dad, brother, and granddad knew, because that for him is very much immediate family. And those were the 5 people that we told, and then I told a couple of friends, one who is a doctor and one who had been through this. And all of these people, our family checked on us, but very much left me alone, which I needed to be left alone. What I needed was my medical friend letting me know that I was okay, and then my other friend who had been through this giving me comfort and letting me know that I wasn't alone in it, that she had been through it and that I would get through it. And knowing that I knew someone who had been through this was very, very helpful. And having that comfort and knowing that I wasn't alone was very, very helpful. I also have my faith, which shapes my outlook on things. And so that was another component that helped me be able to get past that. We get back home from vacation, we have a follow-up appointment then with the OB/GYN, because they wanted to make sure that all of the material had fully passed. And when we went in for that ultrasound and the follow-up appointment with a different midwife, because it was just a random midwife who happened to have availability to fit me in, came, walked in the door, took one look at me, said sorry, and typed a couple of things on the chart, and then was getting ready to walk back out. Didn't physically examine me, did not ask me any questions, did not ask if I had any questions, and was acting as though I was bothering her by being there at the appointment that they had wanted me to schedule. I have never felt treated less like a human than I did by that particular provider. I had questions that I wanted to ask because I wanted to know things for my own health, for my own safety. I wanted to know if there was anything that indicated that it would be unsafe for me to carry a child. I wanted to know when my providers and my medical team felt that it was safe to try again, because there's a lot of different information on the internet that give all sorts of different sources, and I didn't want to just trust the internet. I wanted a medical professional, my medical team, to tell me what they recommended. And so I was trying to ask these questions, and she did not want to answer them. She just was saying whenever, whatever, like really did not care about me as a human. And given the field of medicine that this woman is in, that was very shocking to me. It was very upsetting to me. It was very jarring to me. My husband and I left that appointment and we talked about it, and we decided that for us, I needed to be not just in a very good physical place, but I need to be in a very good emotional and mental place to be willing to try again, since we didn't have a lot of information about what happened. And when I was ready to try again, and we started trying again, immediately got pregnant the second time. And we were excited, we were hesitant, but we were excited. And at about 5.5 weeks, I all of a sudden, no pain, no warning signs, I all of a sudden started to miscarry. And so I called Blake at work. I work from home, and so I called Blake at work and I said, honey, I'm miscarrying, I'm losing the baby. And he immediately came home and held my hand through it. But this one was very different, physically and emotionally, than the first one was. On the emotional side of things, I had not been prepared for this. I was at least prepared knowing it was going to happen the first time, not knowing when, but knowing that it would eventually happen. This time I had no warning. And it was just all of a sudden I was losing the baby. And I tried calling the OBGYN office. They said, come in on Monday, we'll do some blood work and just confirm this was actually a miscarriage. Didn't offer any words of encouragement, didn't offer any compassion, didn't even say, you know, take some Tylenol, take some Advil, here's when you need to go to the hospital or when you would need to consider going to the hospital. None of that took place whatsoever. And as opposed to the first miscarriage that was a couple of hours, this one went on all day, really actually into the second day. It really went on for about 2 days. The pain was not as intense. It was a pain that was stretched out over those couple of days, as opposed to the very sharp, intense pain that I experienced the first time around. And because this baby was at a different stage, I think that that's what led to that happening. But again, the medical providers wouldn't confirm that to me, wouldn't talk to me about it. And this is a very, very hard topic to discuss. And the fact that the healthcare providers did not want to discuss it with me was extremely discouraging and extremely frustrating. And when we went in for that appointment, they did the blood work. They confirmed that, yes, I had a miscarriage. And then I started asking questions again, or trying to ask questions again, with now the third midwife that I had seen in this practice. And as I was asking these questions, the midwife very nastily responded to me that I needed to have at least 3 or 4 miscarriages before they would even consider looking into anything. I did not feel that that was necessary to go through an additional 1 to 2 miscarriages to start looking for answers. And when I politely tried to explain like, oh, if it's a matter of insurance, you know, my insurance should cover it, but if it doesn't, we're happy to pay cash. We would just like to get some answers. And at that point, she told me to be quiet. And at that point, she said, no, absolutely not, quit asking. And this is not something where I was badgering her. This is not something where we'd been having this discussion for 30 minutes or days. We literally had this discussion for all of 5 minutes. And so we left that appointment feeling very frustrated. And when we got into the car from that appointment, I looked at my husband and I said, we are never going back to that place ever again. Once we made that decision, immediately contacted my primary care provider, who is an outstanding physician. And I said, you know, I know this is not your area. I know that this is not your job, but I'm looking for some guidance and some direction, possibly a referral, because this is the experience that we've had, and I want to find answers before we go about trying again and before I have to go through another miscarriage again, unnecessarily. And he said, first off, I think that this is reasonable to want to have these things checked. He said, I will run basic blood work. I'll check hormonal levels. There are a couple of autoimmune diseases that I can check, that I know to check for. He said, so we'll look at those. If all of that comes back as normal, I will then send you to Vanderbilt to their fertility clinic. And I said, okay, this sounds like a very reasonable, good plan. We did the blood work. The blood work all came back as normal. And so went on to Vanderbilt. They were able to see me. I think they were able to get me scheduled within about a month. And once again, connected to a very, very fantastic physician who is still our OBGYN. And when I explained why we were there and why I had concerns, what I hoped to find as far as answers, and why I was uncomfortable trying again without any form of looking into anything, he said, this is very reasonable. You are an otherwise healthy female, and so the fact that you want answers and that you want to be proactive in your healthcare is a completely reasonable response. And that was his first thing that he said to me, was he wanted to reassure me that it wasn't crazy to look for answers, that it wasn't hormonal to look for answers. He also then followed that up by saying, now I want you guys to be in this as a team, because the reality is 50% of the time, we never find an answer. He said, and I need you to be emotionally prepared for that as we start going through this. He said, we're going to work systematically through a series of tests, and that way we can rule things out. He said, because the best that we can do with female healthcare when it comes to pregnancy loss is to rule out what's not wrong. He said that's generally how we end up finding our way to the answer of what is wrong in the 50% of the time that we do find it. And he was very honest, but also very kind in his approach. And we had not experienced that with any of the 3 midwives that we had seen up to this point. And that previous OBGYN clinic that we'd been to would not even let me see the doctor, would not let me talk to a doctor. And that was extremely frustrating, whereas with Vanderbilt, I went right in to a doctor, to a physician. We then began a series of tests. The first ones were non-invasive. They were blood draws. They checked all sorts of different levels within me. They, at different times, they did genetic screening of Blake and myself. They did other screenings. And when all of those came back normal, that's when they began to do the more invasive tests. And these invasive tests can be quite painful. Some of them were just uncomfortable, and one of them, I found out that I was allergic to IV contrast during. I'd had IV contrast before, never had an issue. This particular time I had an allergic reaction, and I ended up, I was convulsing and not really conscious, and Blake said it looked like I was writhing around like a snake trying to shed my skin. And ended up, they took me via ambulance to the actual hospital, to the ER, got what I assumed to be some form of antihistamine, some form of Benadryl into me, and got my system calmed down, and they said, no more IV contrast for you. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, because nothing was wrong, nothing was wrong. And so all of these tests came back showing that everything was completely normal. The biopsies were normal, the samples were normal, the imaging was normal. And that was both reassuring because I knew that there was nothing wrong with Blake and I. It was also a little bit devastating and frustrating at the same time because it meant that we didn't have an answer. And as we were going through with these various tests, once we got to the end of this test, once we had checked everything, Blake and I decided that we wanted to try again. We said, well, okay, all of this is normal. It could just be that it was 2 times of bad luck. And the doctor even said it could just be that it was 2 unfortunate instances of bad luck. And we immediately became pregnant again. And the doctor wanted to be very proactive with this pregnancy, so he had an ultrasound scheduled for what we believe to be the 6-week mark. About 2 hours before we left for that appointment, I started to miscarry. And so I called the doctor's office. I explained, I'm starting to miscarry. I know I'm supposed to have this ultrasound and a follow-up appointment afterwards. What do you want me to do? What do I need to do? Do I still need to keep that appointment? I just don't know what to do because I'm losing this baby and I'm quite sure of that. And so the nurse who I was speaking to immediately said, wait just 1 minute. I can see him down the hallway. He's not in a patient's room yet. Let me go talk to him. I will be right back. She went, she talked to him. She said, all right, what we want to do is we do want you to come in for the appointment. We want to do imaging and lab work right now as this is happening to see if we can see anything going on that would indicate why you are losing this pregnancy. And I said, okay. So we went in, and obviously I'm actively miscarrying and therefore not in the best emotional state. This ultrasound tech, as opposed to the first one who was just completely silent, spoke no word, gave us nothing, was very, very kind. She said, I know that this will be painful to do. She said, I'm so sorry about that. If you need me to step out at any point, if you need us to stop at any point, we will do that. She said, I, however, am going to try to be as quick as I can so that we can get this done and over with for you so that we can get you immediately into the doctor and get you back home. Was extremely kind and compassionate and was extremely quick in her ultrasounding, even though it was painful for me to be miscarrying at the same time that was happening. But was very professional. The doctor came in, was extremely kind and compassionate, and just genuinely cared about me as a human, knowing that there was nothing that could be done for the little human at that point. He was very focused on me as his patient. And what can I do for you right now as my patient to help you? And was just extremely kind. Everyone in the office was extremely kind, was extremely compassionate, very much, I won't say handling us with kid gloves, but was very efficient in making sure that we were in and out as quickly and as privately as we could be in that moment. And he said, I think at this point, because everything anatomy and genetically wise is checked out with both of you, I think that you should consider going to talk to IVF to see if maybe doing genetic testing of embryos could be a potential solution for you. He said, because your issue is not with getting pregnant, it is with staying pregnant. He said, given the age that the second 2 miscarriages occurred at, it leads me to believe that it's most likely just bad luck with genetics on the embryo. And I said, okay. So we scheduled that appointment. Took a while to get that scheduled, but we eventually went and saw the IVF people. And for us, we decided not to go with IVF because it was going to cost estimated between $25,000 and $30,000. And we couldn't even be sure that this would solve our problem. And that was a lot of money to spend on a what if. And I know that I do luxury YouTube, and so I buy expensive things. It wasn't a matter of us not having the money. It was a matter of, do we feel that this is the best way to spend the money? On the work side of things and on the emotional side of things, when it came to that third miscarriage, I very much did not take care of myself mentally. It was during a very busy time in tax season. It was actually the busiest, hardest season that I'd ever gone through, and from a work standpoint, and I just sort of threw myself into work because I didn't want to feel the pain of losing a third child. I didn't want to feel the pain of losing a third pregnancy. I didn't want to feel anything. And in my head, my solution to that was just to throw myself into work. And when I was getting up to working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, that toll, both mentally and physically, broke me down to the point that right before, I think it was the day before the deadline, I had to call my manager and I had to say, I can't do this right now. I need the rest of this work that's at me. I need it gone from me. And she very kindly reallocated to people who had freed up at this point and got it off me and told me to go home and take care of myself because it was Friday afternoon. And so I took care of myself that weekend, and that was when I think I really started to heal. Even though it had been a couple of months, I don't think that I started to really process what had happened and to heal from it and to move on until 2 months later, because I didn't take the time that I needed to take care of myself. But as we came out of that, and as I finally began to heal from that, Blake and I were very much together in it. And it took quite a while before I felt good again, before I felt like myself again, and it took some recovery. And we got to a place where we were in a really good place. I was very happy. I was very content with, if this didn't happen for us, it didn't happen for us. And Blake was in that place as well. We had 2 wonderful dogs and a wonderful life together. I was also starting a new job at my new firm that I was extremely excited for. And so we were in a place where we just felt like that we didn't necessarily need to try again, and that we actually did not want to try again because I was starting this new job that I was very excited about and didn't want to go on maternity leave within the first year of starting my new job. And at the end of my first week, I had just been feeling very run down and tired, which is not like me. I had also been feeling very warm, which is not like me. I'm normally a very cold person. I'm normally wrapped up in a blanket, even if it's the middle of summer, when I am working. And so this just sort of made me think that something was weird, and I was like, oh, I'll just take a pregnancy test just to rule that out. And to my surprise, that pregnancy test was positive, and I was pregnant. And so told Blake when he came home, we scheduled the appointment. Again, they wanted it to be at 6 weeks so that we could be early in proactive and management. And for the first time, we got to see that heartbeat. For the first time, we got to have joy in a pregnancy, and that is this pregnancy that I'm currently carrying and that we are so excited over and so happy over. And I still don't know what the difference was. The only thing that we had started that was slightly different is that I was taking aspirin and CoQ10 because at Nashville Fertility, they said that they recommended that because sometimes it made a difference for people. I don't know if that's what made the difference. I don't know if it was just the right timing. I don't know if it was because I was in a very low stress time because I had left my old firm and was starting my new job. I don't know what it was. I don't know why this pregnancy is successful. I can't offer any guidance there. I'm not a medical professional. What I can say is that there can be hope. My grandmother had 4 miscarriages. She also has 2 healthy children who are my father and my aunt. She had a medical issue they were able to identify, and that allowed her to carry my aunt safely. My mother had endometriosis. The doctors did not want to listen to her. She kept pushing. She went to a different doctor. She found someone who was willing to listen, who believed her. They found her endometriosis. They did the surgery, and she was able to get pregnant with me. And that was after years and years of trying to get pregnant and not being able to get pregnant. And so that doesn't mean that it's always going to be a happy outcome, but there is hope. And if you get anything out of this video today, I hope that you get that you are not alone in this, that your questions and your feelings and how you go through this and how you experience this is unique to you, but you are not alone. And that I hope that you feel encouraged to ask the medical professionals in your circle questions, that you feel empowered to seek answers, that you go and you get that second or that third opinion if you need to. And I hope that even if you don't get the answers that you want, that with your friends, your family, your faith, whatever it is that brings you comfort, that you are able to get to a good place in your life where you know that your value is not tied up in what you're physically able to do. And even though no one put pressure like this on me, I myself felt like a failure because I felt like that I was failing myself, my family, as a female, as a mother, because I wasn't able to successfully carry pregnancies because I'd lost 3 pregnancies. And I felt like such a failure. And until I was able to move past that, truly move past that and truly get past that, I was not at a place where I was okay not having children. Ironically enough, I got to that place and then we found out that we were pregnant. But I want you to know that your value as a person is not tied up in what you are able to do biologically. It is not tied up in success or failure in this, because there's so much that we don't know and don't understand about pregnancy. And I hope that through this you will know that my thoughts and my prayers are with you, that you are not alone, that you have value as a person outside of anything else. And I hope that you are able to get the support and the answers that you want. I hope that this video has been helpful. It's not an easy video to film, but it is a video that I felt was necessary because, to me, if it can help one person to know what I've gone through, if that can help you in some way, it is worth it to me if just one person gets benefit from this video. And with that, I will leave you to it. The next video that I put out will be some very much more fun and enjoyable luxury content. If you do want to see the announcement and unboxing, you are welcome to click on that video. It is linked down below. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, everyone. Goodbye.